Okay, in this video we're going to go over the installation of 3 different Linux distributions, and we're going to start with Ubuntu, one that's very widely known. First thing we've got to do is we've got to download what's called an ISO file. So we're going to go ahead and pull up the Ubuntu website. You can either use the top or second link, the download link. So we'll go over to download Ubuntu, and we're looking for it might be Ubuntu or Ubuntu, however it's pronounced. We're looking for the desktop version, and since we're installing it on a virtual machine, but if we were installing it on a semi-modern laptop, we would be looking for the 64-bit. Just download it wherever it needs to be downloaded, and we'll go ahead and speed this up right here. Alright, so with the ISO file downloaded, we're going to go ahead and close out the browser for now and open up VirtualBox. So it downloaded to the downloads folder, which is where the browser placed it. Alright, so in VirtualBox here, I have 2 other virtual machines I was doing some testing with, but we need to create a new one. So we're going to create a new virtual machine for this Ubuntu ISO file. You can name it whatever you'd like. I'm just going to call it this. After we give it a name, we're going to have to locate the ISO image that we had downloaded, which it actually shows up right here with the one that we had done. We're going to skip the unattended installation so that we can do a little bit of customization. This is entirely up to you whenever you're working with a virtual machine. I just decided to give this a little bit of memory to it. Later on I will up it a little bit more, but for right now we're just going to do 8 gigs of RAM and 2 CPU cores. The standard size of 25 gigabytes is perfectly fine for a virtual machine. Go ahead and hit finish, and then once we have that done, we're going to go ahead and hit start, and it will open up in a new window where we will then go through the process of installing Ubuntu 24. You'll notice as we go through this install that the virtual machine window is kind of small, so some things may be a little bit hard to see. When I go through this again, I'll try to make that a little bit easier to view. But go through just the standard error configuration. Sometimes that shows up, sometimes it does not. Which is interesting, even though this error box showed up saying this configuration is likely broken, we didn't have any issues installing the system. Alright, and once it is booted up, here we are at the desktop for Ubuntu 24. Since we're going to be installing it, we're just going to go straight to the installation process here. Don't have to worry about clicking on anything. It just goes straight to it. Alright, so first we will select the language we're going to install this system with. Since I speak English, we're going to go ahead and go with that. You can set up these accessibility options if you need them. Go ahead and take a look at them if you do need them. You can use the little box at the bottom to test your keyboard if you have a different keyboard layout. Since we're in a virtual machine, it does show up as a wired connection, so no need to access a Wi-Fi connection at this time, especially since it's a virtual machine. There is an option to update the installer. I didn't do it this time, and we're just going to go straight into install Ubuntu. And we'll do the interactive installation since we don't have an auto install file. Go ahead and go with the default selection since we're just using this for just this video and maybe some in the future. So we'll go ahead and also go ahead and allow it to install the other software that it may need for other features that comes with Ubuntu 24. Since it's a virtual machine, we're going to go ahead and use the erase disk option. And here's where we'll create our account. So we're going to give it a name, and it'll automatically come up with a computer name. And give it a password. Since this isn't a system that we're going to be doing anything like extensive or anything like that or work related with, we'll just use a rather simple password and select the time zone of where we are. So you can use this to select an area near where you're at, so you can go ahead and have the updated proper time. This is where you review the choices of what's going on. Go ahead and speed up the video a little bit here through the install, where it installs the files. Most distributions, they have this little slideshow of information about the distribution on it. So we can kind of see some of the options, like the gaming options, the developer options, things like that, that you can then put onto your distribution, install through the Software Center, install through the terminal, and of course the help and support section. But we'll go ahead and let this finish installing. That way we'll have a working Ubuntu system. Alright, since we're running this on a virtual machine, we'll go ahead and hit restart. Go ahead and set up the screen to be larger. We're going to go ahead and go with the 1920 by 1080. So go through the little things that it prompts us at the end. Set it up 1920 by 1080, and now we have a working Ubuntu system. Dark mode, of course, much easier on the eyes. Alright, so here we'll go ahead and install our next Linux distribution. This is one I use whenever I use Linux. This is my main Linux distribution I use. It's called Linux Mint. It's very user-friendly. It's based off of Ubuntu. So we're going to go to the website. And it has a few different versions. So we have the Cinnamon, the XFCE, and the Mate edition. The one that most people are familiar with is the Cinnamon edition. So we're going to go ahead and download it. So in order to download it, you have to go down to the download mirrors. We're just going to go ahead and use the standard Linux Mint download mirror to go ahead and save it. Alright, and just like before, go ahead, once we get it downloaded, we'll go ahead and open up VirtualBox and create a new virtual machine for Linux Mint. We use the same settings as we did for the Ubuntu box. We'll just have to go in and select the ISO image that we downloaded. If it puts it in there automatically, that's great. Otherwise, you may have to go to the downloads folder and mark it for which ISO you're going to use. Go ahead and skip unattended because we might specify a few things. Give it the regular memory, which I will change later on just to make things run a little bit smoother. Go ahead and hit next. 25 gigabytes is fine for a virtual machine. You'll notice that one of the options I chose was not to pre-allocate the full size. If you go ahead and pre-allocate the full size, the virtual machine will go ahead and take up the 25 gigabytes or however much you've decided. Since we don't want that to happen, I don't select that for these virtual machines. Just like before, when you first start these up, the windows are kind of small. But we'll adjust this one for Linux Mint as well. Here we are at the Linux Mint desktop. Go ahead and bring up the install application here. You notice that it's similar to the Ubuntu installer. Since this version of Mint is based off of Ubuntu, it is going to be very, very similar to installing the Ubuntu system. We may not need them, but we'll go ahead and allow it to install these multimedia codecs. Never know. Maybe when we get to toying around with this little virtual machine, we may have needed to do this. So go ahead and just do it so we don't run into any issues later. And just like before, since we're installing a virtual machine, we're going to go ahead and erase disk and install Linux Mint. If we were installing it on a laptop or desktop, it would be a very similar process to this. If you're not dual booting, you could go ahead and just select for it to go ahead and erase the entire disk and install the system there. Go ahead and create our username and password. And just like before, since we're not doing anything like really mission critical, we're just doing this to kind of be familiar with these systems. Not going to really use a super complex password. And you'll notice, just like previously, they'll give you a quick slideshow of options and extra applications that can be installed. So Linux Mint does come with a lot of options, and I find it to be very sufficient for what I do with Linux on a day-to-day basis. One thing to note about this slideshow, if you ever do need help or you ever come across any kind of issue I've ever found with Linux Mint, they do have a very, very good forum where you can post your question and get answers, and you'd be surprised some of the things that you may run into that you think no one else has ever dealt with. You can find someone on the forum who's probably dealt with it and fixed it, and you're able to get the issue resolved. So I like using Linux Mint for my daily. You'll notice when we're downloading these systems and running them in VirtualBox, this is actually all running on a Linux Mint system. So we've got everything installed. We'll go ahead and do a quick restart so we can adjust the screen resolution again. You're met with this welcome menu. So go through the settings, hit the display, make it full screen, and here we go. All right, so for our third operating system, we're going to go ahead and install what's known as Pop! OS, which is from System 76. Pop! OS is one of the, I guess you'd say more, I don't know if I'd say more polished, but I have used Pop! OS since about version 18. Once again, it is also based on Ubuntu. So we're going to go to the System 76 website and download it. Go ahead and save it where it needs to be saved. Alright, once we have our ISO file, we're going to go ahead and open up VirtualBox once again. Use the same settings as before, which when we go ahead and after we get everything installed, we will actually update all these systems. As a matter of fact, since we had a little bit of a slow startup with Linux Mint, we went ahead and started using 12 gigabytes of RAM in these virtual machines instead of 8. So I'll get all those updated shortly. So this one doesn't give you the option to do that, so we're going to have to install it step by step. So go ahead and put in 12 gigabytes of RAM. $25 gigabytes for the hard disk is fine for a virtual machine. go ahead and start this up. A little note about Pop! OS. If I could find it, I actually have an older ThinkPad that is falling apart that still has Pop! OS 18.04 on it. Alright, here we are at the desktop. Notice this does look somewhat familiar, but of course it has been customized because we are doing Pop! OS, and I've come to really like this distribution. I've seen some screenshots of the new Cosmic desktop. I haven't had a chance to do anything with it, and it looks amazing. Not trying to promote them or anything like that, but it is well worth the look if you're looking to test out a Linux distribution for daily use or whatever you may need it for. I'm going to do a clean install like we've done on the last few. This time we just got to select the virtual disk. You see how it says the VBox, which is the VirtualBox hard disk. Go ahead and put in the username here. Username and password. Once again, not doing anything major with it, so we're just kind of trying to tinker with it. They do offer encrypting the hard drive, which will add an extra layer of security. If you install Linux on a desktop or laptop, I highly suggest doing that, because what it'll do, it will encrypt the hard drive, which will, the difference you'll see is when you turn on your system, you will have an encryption password that you need to input prior to getting to the Linux system. It's an additional layer of security. Very good idea if you are using it for, maybe you have something on there that you're working on. It may be work related, or it may be just something personal of yours. Always a good idea to encrypt your hard drive when you can. Since it's a virtual machine, we're not even going to worry about it right now. Alright, and what we're going to do, go ahead and fix the screen resolution just like we've done previously. Log in. Now get to go through the welcome screen, get the personalization, all of that. Fix the display size, and there we go.